Namaskaram everyone, welcome to the next installment sharing some recent news with regard to Hinduism. We have two main items right now. First is some news out of Tamil Nadu about a government plan to establish the Samathuvapuram in Thene by destroying temple land, and the background of the protest for some of the locals. Then also we have some quite a bit more in-depth background about Joshua Project, which is a world evangelization effort. So first, just to cover quickly, a piece of news coming from Tamil Nadu. So the issue is a equality village called as Samathuvapuram is reportedly being established by cutting down trees of a temple land in Tamil Nadu. So reportedly there exist many temples and sacred groves at the Eruma Lanayakam village in Thene district. These temples and sacred groves are revered by the locals and are being worshipped traditionally for ages. Recently, the villagers came to know that a new Samathuvapuram was to be established by cutting down trees of the sacred groves belonging to these temples, the Equality Village. And upon coming to know about this, the local villagers reportedly laid siege to the Panchayat Union at Pariyakulam office, demanding the government not to proceed with the establishment of this Samathuvapuram. Officials reportedly tried to pacify the people, asking them to withdraw the protest. However, locals warned that a big protest will break out if the government decides to proceed with the construction of the Samathuvapuram at the said site. One of the villagers also was quoted as saying in a media report that they themselves don't even take a twig, not even take a twig from the sacred groves, and that the government's move to build the Samathuvapuram at the sacred site has angered them. So, one more example of some underhanded backdoor moves where devotees just come to know the day before or the day of when temple lands are to be demolished and dissected. So just once again a reminder that there was recently a period of 100 days where 500 temples were destroyed in Tamil Nadu alone. So it's not a small incident. It's a past the space of emergency. So now this is quite a bit more detailed information coming about Joshua Project. If you're not aware of Joshua Project, you can. There's a huge website with details of all these dots on here are people groups basically that are already converted or need to be converted. So the red is the unreached. So you see a lot of unreached people in India need to be converted for the goal to be achieved for the second coming for the religious conversionists. Once that gospel is preached in all lands, then the second coming of the Messiah will come. So that is, along with Lausanne Covenant, is essentially the purpose of Joshua Project. If you go through their website, again, these are multi-billion-dollar conglomerates that have even a cooperative history going back more than 50 years. And so there's huge information about all of them in their own websites, and something like 16,000 so-called people groups that are studied. So we'll just give you a little bit of background of some of the intense targeting that happens in order to accomplish the goal of world evangelization. So reportedly in Mission Kali, is the Joshua Project is a Christian missionary organization that aims to reach these unreached people, those that haven't heard about the message of Christianity. It's headquartered in Colorado, United States, and is part of the Venture Center, earlier called the U.S. Center for World Mission. So they maintain a database of non-reached people to coordinate the work of various missionary organizations. which is extremely comprehensive and analyzes the characteristics of different people groups and the relationship between them. So as we saw, shows each of these dots will be a different people group. So even every small village will be studied to what language they speak, what kind of foods they eat, what kind of relationships they have, the deities they worship, the festivals they celebrate, and the conflicts they have within the community and with other communities. Extremely targeted, extremely expensive, extremely time intensive, extremely professional targeting of individual communities and small groups of people to know exactly where their weaknesses are, where they can be exploited, and how they can be converted. Extremely professional, extremely targeted, extremely specific to minute details. You can go on the website and see. You can see pictures of how the people look, descriptions of how they dress, and like I said, you can see what kind of foods they eat, if they eat meat or if they don't, and what circumstances. And certainly, this website from Joshua Project definitely gives more information about those villagers and those communities than they have about themselves. Not everyone in the community will know what Joshua Project knows about them. So there's a article reportedly on the Joshua Project website called "The Blessing: God's Promise, Our Purpose." So in that is reportedly written, "We must not also require people of other social or religious groups like Hindus to enter the kingdom of God, Christ, and become true worshippers by first changing their natural identity to be like the natural identity of another group of people." And it goes on to say, "If your Hindu friend repents and begins to follow Jesus, God will forgive his sins in the same way he forgave yours." So it's sort of saying, like, you don't have to change the people culturally. They just have to accept Jesus and their sins will be cleansed. So that's sort of, why we see the Jesus represented like in yoga pose, and the Jesus Sahasranama, and the Jesus dressed up like Subramanyam, and the Dwajastamba, the flagpole at Hindu temples, or I guess they're churches, but you see churches, but they look like Hindu temples. If you looked at it, you'd say that's a Hindu temple, no doubt, but at the top there's a cross. And so you'll see that with the Dwajastamba at those churches also. The Dwajastamba is there with the metallic rings going up, but on the top is a cross. So sort of saying, like, we're not bothered culturally. We're not bothered culturally about the people. Just convert them. Don't worry about needing to change how they dress and this and that and this and that. That all can be co-opted. Just convert, baptize. That's all. That's it. And many informational websites are there. If you go through Hope Yoga and find references of who they reference as sources for the evangelistic goals, it's specifically stated in their websites that even lying, cheating, stealing, any of these tactics are, if you go to specific places, they will reference that it's acceptable if the result is, like, any method is acceptable if you save that person's soul. So if they get converted, all those methods are forgiven. Not everyone will say that, but you can find those references. And you can go through Hope Yoga and find who they reference on their website as sources. Go to those websites and you'll see. So in 1995, a global conference on world evangelization was held in Korea. And so also we'll remember in 1974, the Lausanne Covenant was signed, which was also a international conference on world evangelization. So a project called 82,000 and Beyond Movement was launched. in 1995. The goal was a church for every people and the gospel for every person by the year 2000. So this is the necessary goal. Otherwise, the souls go into eternal separation and there's no other path except Jesus. So it's a necessity, a responsibility for Joshua Project to essentially convert people in every part of the world for the Messiah to come again. So this is on their websites. From 1995 to 2000, Joshua Project reached close to 1,700 mission leaders for church planting efforts. So church planting is where missionaries will go into villages or places and basically just plant a church, just erect a church. Go in there and find some land and just stick a church in there. You see, we had a story just recently in the southern part of the district of Tiruvannamalai, where the district collector had ordered the eviction of land which had been encroached on the top of a 5 acres for parking on the top of a hill that was government land. So these kind of, this is one small incident in a place of many. And so these kind of things happen. And another incident we were reporting on was this this place in, I'm just trying to remember where it was, but Tamil Nadu. This is Acharapakam Hill in Kanchipuram district of Tamil Nadu. So this incident is said to be 1800-year-old Hindu temple at the top of the hill. So there's no, destructive development. And but then what happened is there was 2 shrines at the top of the hill destroyed, and also that area replaced by this giant crucifix. So what you have is the hill, the temple, you can see it's pristine basically, with the Ayurvedic herbs growing everywhere still. So this is like nearly 2,000 years kept like this. Then what happens is the top of the temple is destroyed, and the shrines at the top of the temple is destroyed, and a large pathway is constructed to get up to that crucifix, and it ends up zigzagging across the landscape like this, and you can see other buildings encroached on the hill. So basically you have a temple at the top of a hill, and then this is built on top of it and all around it. So this is like an aerial view of 2002. Nothing is there, trees and a few shrines of the Shiva temple. Pushpatishwara temple. And so then the encroachments come in up till 2014. So the trees are cleared. The mountainside is covered with a walkway, and buildings coming all on the eastern side. So one small example, and but happening frequently. So back to the Joshua Project for the second part of the information for today. So yes, so this is part of the church planting efforts. So in the years from 1995 to 2000, Joshua Project reached close to 1,700 mission leaders for church planting efforts. So these are people to go around the world into these places and just erect churches. So you see this in Sabrimala also, the hills of Sabrimala. Giant churches there. Just out of nowhere. You'd just be driving through the forest there in the Sabrimala hills, and a giant church, a huge spire church. And so kind of wonder how and who decided to build a giant church in the middle of this large forest, but this small forested area, a giant church just pops up. So This is also what was told about the encroachment of this temple, was that or this hill, was that reportedly a cross was planted atop this hill in 1961 and a church later built in 1982. And that reportedly there will be like permits gotten to build housing in the area, but those houses become churches. So sort of the progression of things. And so it starts with a cross on the top of a hill. So you see that in Sabarimala. You see hills and you see just a cross there. And there is also the prevention of building an airport in the area because of the land being occupied by a cross and saying that it belongs to a certain denomination and that they will not allow the development. So all these sort of different things go on. So yes, Joshua Project 2000 unleashed tremendous energy and resources to identify, research, profile, and adopt and target the unreached people. So in the booklet, there's a booklet reportedly to the uttermost part, the call to North India. So Joshua Project had reportedly written in detail their modus operandi for conversions with special emphasis on the North India Hindi belt. The states on their radar are Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, and Haryana. The above states can be exploited for the lack of development, illiteracy, poverty, and large population to finish the unfinished agenda of world evangelization. So just targeted people groups. Joshua Project has reportedly accepted spies to survey the land and gather information, as the booklet reportedly states that India has been so carefully surveyed, prepared, well published, and distributed. In this, the North India Hindu belt is unique. We do not believe it is accidental. God is allowing us to spy out the land that we might go in and claim both it and its inhabitants for Him. So it's a mission. It's a mission. It's the mission, the life mission, right? The life purpose. The purpose is to evangelize the planet. That is a necessity mission for these organizations. It's the purpose of their life. The necessity, responsible fulfillment of their life is to convert people in every part of the world. That is literally, plainly, in their own words, their mission. It's a necessity. It has to happen or their life is failure. So it has to happen for them. Hindus have to be converted. There's another way. Joshua Project mentioned a few churches in India who carry out their missions, including the Friends of Missionary Prayer Band, Gospel for Asia, Operation Mobilization, the Association of Pentecostals, the Charismatic New Life Churches, and North India Harvest Network. So harvesting the Hindus. It especially uses Indian Christian doctors to infiltrate remote areas to carry out missionary activities. Under the pretext of providing healthcare, these doctors convert innocent tribals in various Indian states. So you see a lot of times that even disaster relief will be offered, but it will come with a Bible in hand or a pamphlet, and then encourage coming to meetings, and then like the disaster relief center that is erected to provide the urgent crisis healthcare will later become a church center. And there are organizations like Water of Life that go and build wells in these villages, and then basically gather the villagers into Bible study groups and do the church planting activities, which Joshua Project provides probably billions of dollars to this point. Certainly in their manifesto they do, to do the church planting in those areas. So there are those kind of things, like a well comes to your village, but it comes with a Bible, it comes with conversion. And so it's almost like coercion coming, that you can have the healthcare we're providing, but it's coming with conversion. So this is why people are pushing for the protection of religious freedom bills, like in Karnataka, so-called anti-conversion bill. And also why there's so much opposition against that groups like Lausanne Project or Lausanne Covenant and Joshua Project are arguing that protecting Hindus against conversion violates the rights of Joshua Project to convert them. So it's against the religious freedom of Joshua Project to convert others when you protect Hindus from conversion. But this is how it gets argued in the courts. So Joshua Project supporting writers reportedly write that, quote, they discover the knowledge of a group's self-perception and its perception by others is relevant for developing outreach strategies and moving towards an understanding of the groups God had called them to reach. For example, some of the responsive people groups in the state of Uttar Pradesh they studied were 18 million Chamars, the 1 million Valmikis, and the Rajputs, Thakurs, and Yadavs, 11 million each. Huge groups of people. Focusing on people groups could result in fresh mass movements into the kingdom. So this is sourced from the Clash in Worldview and the Peoples of South Asia, 1998, by Louis Bush. So this is basically saying that Joshua Project discovers that having knowledge of the groups, how they perceive themselves and how they're perceived by others, is relevant in finding out how to reach them. So if you learn about, this is the Purva Paksha, right? So if you learn about how a group views itself and how others view them, then you basically learn about their culture and their history and their worldview, and so then you know how to infiltrate. You know how to approach them, how to present your story in order for them to accept the baptism. So this is sort of saying that it is relevant to know about how the people think about themselves and how other people view them, because they will have a long-standing history of the differences about that group. So it's helpful to know, if you want to convert a group, it's helpful to know how the groups around them see them, right? Because that tells you how that group is seen as different or how they're seen as same. So having not just how that group is aware of themselves, but how other groups are aware of them, because they will have the outsider perspective, right? Those looking at us always see much more about us than we see about ourselves. So having that perspective of how the neighbors see that group, then you can see what is different about them and what is the same and what is exploitable. So this is basically the writing from 1998 saying that it's important to know how these different people groups see themselves and how the groups around them see them. It's relevant to knowing how this says, towards an understanding of the groups God had called them to reach. God has called us to reach them. We need to find out who they are, how they are, so we can fulfill God's word. The Joshua Project cites anthropological studies to tailor-make holistic approaches to convert impoverished groups in North India. Holistic approaches. So instead of just going on an individual base, right? Just converting one by one by one by one. You know the culture, learn the people. What do they work for? What do they live for? And incorporate that perspective into your approach. So it becomes, you can extrapolate it from just an individual to the entire community. So there are stories of entire villages being converted in one day. And like 27,000 people, etc., being converted in one day. And groups on Twitter tweeting that there was like groups like Water of Life claiming that they had converted 1 or 2 million people in 1 year. So 10 years is 10 million people by one organization. And this Joshua Project had said that they had reached out to 17,000 mission leaders for church planting efforts in a 6-year span from 1995 to 2000. It's a big deal, people. So lastly, for more than 800 years, Sanatana Hindu Dharma had successfully repulsed constant attacks of conversionists. With the supreme sacrifices of our valiant ancestors, the current generation of Hindus cannot remain complacent and take this existential threat lightly. as we owe the debt of passing on the Sanatana Hindu Dharma in a strengthened manner to the next generation. If we fail to take responsibility for each other now, the Hindu civilization too will be confined to history books. So this is the plan. It's a necessary plan. That's one thing Hindus, you have to understand, is this is not optional. That the Joshua Project and Lausanne Covenant is telling us it's not an option. Conversion is not an option. It has to happen. The only way the Messiah comes again is when the gospel has been preached in all lands of the earth. That's a definition of the necessary responsibility for why the ascribers to this project have life and Lausanne Covenant is to reach the gospel to every corner of the earth. And if it's a failure and irresponsible if it doesn't happen. So that means you Hindus, you must be converted. There's no other alternative. So thank you everyone. Please leave your comments and links to your relevant stories and videos and news. And we would love to connect with you. Please send us a message and let us know your interests. Thank you everyone. Namaskaram.